Phoenix Suns have become a cautionary tale of why roster construction is important, a cautionary tale of why to avoid the second tax apron, a cautionary tale of no trade clauses. We're going to talk about it all and more and what the NBA needs to learn from the Phoenix Suns right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball related. I'm the host, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go and get into this content for today, y'all. And I was sitting back thinking, right? I was going to do, usually we do the latest news and things like that around this channel, but sometimes you just need to have a conversation about the state of something in the NBA. The Phoenix Suns last night were statistically eliminated, or officially eliminated from even making the play-in tournament, right? And this is not something that should be too surprising to anybody, but when you step back and look at what the story of the Phoenix Suns were, right? After many straight years of not making the playoffs, they did not make the playoffs from the 2010-11 season all the way to the 2019-20 season. No playoffs for that Phoenix Suns team. That was after they made the Western Conference Finals in 2009 and 10. That's a handful of years of straight, almost 10 years of not making the playoffs, right? And from that, they then make it all the way to the Western Conference Finals in 2020-21. Finishing that season with 51 wins, right? That's a 70% win percentage because it was only a 72-game season that year, right? They didn't make it to the NBA Finals. They do not make it out the finals. They lost in the NBA Finals, and they seemed like a team that was on the uptick. You had Devin Booker, who was a young, up-and-coming player at that point in time, who you looked at as somebody who, could be the leading guard in the NBA, could be one of the best shooting guards, if not the best shooting guards in the NBA, and on his trajectory to do that, right? His relationship, with Kobe Bryant and all that type of thing. And many people saw him as the heir apparent for that, kind of carry on that legacy, right? That's now become Jason Tatum in a lot of ways. And, that seemed like a team that really was on an uptick. And, rightfully so, right? You looked at that team, the way the role players stepped up in that series, and they just seemed like a team that was just really on their way, right, to really becoming a team that perennially was going to be in the Western Conference Finals at minimum and be able to contend with that team, right? That was a season where Chris Paul came to that team, and they really took off that year. And just the way that they looked different offensively, the way Chris Paul and Devin Booker played together. And then Chris Paul goes on to play 2 more years with that Phoenix Suns team. And over those 2 years, they make it to the Western Conference semifinals. They have a 64-win season in that year. That was an 82-game season. They won 78% of their games that year. The year after that, they won 45 games. They lost in the semifinals again, right? And this was at the point where you thought that this team was going to look to really do something different. And then, unfortunately, the Phoenix Suns made a decision that forever will change what their team is, right? They decided to trade for Bradley Beal, right? They traded in June 2023, they traded for Bradley Beal. And that was the season where you're doing something, right? They brought in Kevin Durant as well. You thought that team was going to do something. And for a while there, that team still looked like a team that, all right, listen, they're putting some things together. They're going to be solid enough, right? They're going to figure it out. And it did not happen. And it's been a downhill turn basically since then. It's just been downhill from that team since then. And it all culminated in this season, even though the Phoenix Suns actually started off the season in a pretty good place, right? They started off the season in a pretty damn good place. But trading for Bradley Beal, making the decision after getting Kevin Durant, having him, DeAndre Ayton, and making a trade to bring in Bradley Beal, everything went down. And listen, I'm not here to blame everything on Bradley Beal. I don't think it's that. But I do think that it was a first sign that the Phoenix Suns had no idea how roster construction worked, right? You had no point guard on that team. You didn't have it, right? You just did not have a point guard on that team. And because of that, you were hoping that the scoring prowess of Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal was really going to push you to something. And it didn't, right? You decide to make the trade. You send DeAndre Ayton out of there, right? Because of whatever was going on with him. You decided to make that move. You get him up out of there during the 2022-23 season, right? And, that's another decision that you decide to make at the end of that before you come back. And now the Phoenix Suns sit here, right, as a second tax apron team, right? After finishing the 2023-24 season, getting swept in the first round of the playoffs, they didn't win a single game. That's a 49-win season, and still there's some hope. You bring in Tyus Jones. You hope that he's going to be the point guard, and his play has actually been pretty good. And you start off this season actually looking like a decent team, and it all comes crumbling down, right? You got even so much so that you got Devin Booker saying that they have no winning habits in Phoenix, right? And that's a problem, right? Like when your player, the one that you drafted to your team, your franchise players says that you have no winning habits, that's a big concern by the state of your franchise, right? Then at the trade deadline, all the rumors around, the Jimmy Butler rumors, everything. Bradley Beal can't wait. He chooses not to waive his no trade clause. That's really the last ditch effort you were hoping for to make a significant move. You thought about moving Kevin Durant. He says that he doesn't want to move in the middle of the season. And now the Phoenix Suns sit in this place where they have been eliminated. You have one of the highest tax bill, I believe it is the highest tax bill in the entirety of the NBA. They are paying just in luxury tax payments, $152 million in luxury tax payments. That's what they're paying. They're $25 million above the second tax apron. You can't aggregate salaries. You don't have any exceptions to add to your team either. And now you're theoretically stuck. You're stuck with this roster. Now, you can move Kevin Durant, but you can't take multiple players back unless you make a subsequent move to get below the second tax apron first, right? Which in the summer of this year, there'll be $11 million beneath the second tax apron if they don't re-sign any of their players. That would also come with them exercising or waiving their club option on Vasilije Micić, who has an $8 million club option there. You still have to look to move a player like Grayson Allen or Royce O'Neal and hope that somebody's going to absorb their salary for the most part, and you not take any money back for real for you to get beneath the second tax apron. At that point, maybe you can do some business and you can do some things, right? But the Suns, cautionary tale of breaking up a team that, maybe had reached the ceiling, right? But how you break that team up is really important. You traded a young piece who, all right, DeAndre Ayton, maybe it's not the worst thing to move on from DeAndre Ayton, right? You bring in Bradley Beal. All right, you bring in Bradley Beal. You hope they're going to figure it out. We need a point guard. You don't find one. The combination of those moves, the combination of all those things happening, the combination of moving on from Chris Paul to bring in Bradley Beal, the combination of moving on from DeAndre Ayton, right? The combination of not having a team with a defensive structure that's needed, moving on from head coaches. You're paying a ton of head coaches. You look at all the head coaches that they've moved on from over the years when it comes down to it. You got that going on with this team as well, right? And then you have a roster and a team that just looks like when they're out there playing together, doesn't care to play with it for each other, doesn't like each other, and now you're hoping for a last-ditch effort to try to move Kevin Durant, or hell, reportedly, they're even open to keeping Kevin Durant, which I don't know why you want to double down and give him more money to stay in the bullshit that you're in, but you're sitting here now in a place where nobody knows what's going to happen. Brian Windhorst on today's episode of First Take said this: what Durant is going to want is he's going to want to stay here or say here are my three teams. I'm going to go to that team with my understanding of I'm going to pick them. And then I'm going to get there and say I'm prepared to sign my 2-year, $120 million contract extension. I'm set all up for 3 years, $180 million. That doesn't work in the modern NBA. If you are a good team that wants Kevin Durant, you may not be able to afford to bring him in at that kind of salary, right? So throwing some salt on the things of that the Suns aren't even going to have a clear ability to move Kevin Durant if they wanted to. Now, there are some teams that can make that easier. The Houston Rockets, they have Fred VanVleet's contract, which I think matches most of what Kevin Durant's contract is. It gets you most of the way there, right? If the Suns can make another subsequent move to where they can take back multiple deals, all right, cool. Maybe that works out for you, right? But ultimately, it just comes down to this thing again. The Suns there's no magically saving this Phoenix Suns team. There's nobody that's walking through that door that's going to magically alter and correct the path that the Phoenix Suns are in. And you could talk about moving Bradley Beal. Wait, great, but is he going to waive his no-trade clause? Right? Are you going to put the pressure on him to tell him to stay at home? We're just going to pay you to stay at home if you're not going to take this no-trade clause? Is that what you're potentially offering here? To try to force Bradley Beal to take a deal that you want him to take? Because I don't see that necessarily going well for yourself either. It's unfortunate, right? When it comes down to it, the Phoenix Suns are a team that every team around the NBA needs to learn from. Learn of the risk of going into the second tax apron if you have a team that you are not 100% sure is it going to be a team that's going to be able to compete for a title, right? Of putting together players and hoping that just talent and high-played stars are going to get you over the hump and get you to a place where you're winning basketball games consistently, right? And it's a cautionary tale of so many different things. And right now, the Phoenix Suns are not going to be the beneficiary of any of it. Any of it. And that's just the sad and unfortunate part of where the Phoenix Suns are right now. And listen, it's by their own. When you try to look at the blame, right? Everybody has their own blame in it. Kevin Durant has some of the blame as a player. The players, Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, everybody has it because they don't care enough. And it's evident out there when you see them playing. The front office actually absolutely has its place in how they put and constructed this roster together. You then also have coaching, which also is an issue at times with this team as well, right? All of this stuff that's going on right now, it's bad. It's bad. And so the Lakers eliminating the Phoenix Suns from playoff contention, it's just another thing and another shit story that is the Phoenix Suns and why they are the cautionary tale of how everything can go wrong, right? Everything, and keep in mind, you're having a relatively, I say relatively because it's relative, healthy season for most of your core players, right? You've had some injury concerns here and there. Make no mistake about it. You have had that. I'm not going to act like that has not existed. But the Phoenix Suns better hope that Brian Windhorst is wrong and that there are some teams that are going to be willing to take on Kevin Durant and they can find a deal here because I tell you what, you got 74 games from Devin Booker this season, right? 62 games so far from Kevin Durant, which, again, I look at anything. You can get close to 65 games. It's a relatively healthy season. You've gotten 52 games from Bradley Beal. That's not going to cut it. That's not enough. But you got 5 players in this roster who've already played over 70 games with a couple of games left to go. So they can't just blame it on injury, right? They're not the Philadelphia 76ers, which is another team that's a cautionary tale for a lot of different reasons, right? But the Phoenix Suns cautionary tale goes all the way back to the trust the process era and how that's really hurt that team and as many wrong decisions as they made. But nonetheless, I'm going to stay right here on the Phoenix Suns for right now. The Phoenix Suns, who next year are slated to be over the salary cap, over the second tax apron, so you're going to have to figure that out, right? You don't have your own first-round pick. That's going to Cleveland. Like, what's happening here? So, unfortunately, where the things sit right now, where everything shakes out and everything's sitting where it stands right now, the Phoenix Suns are one of the biggest cautionary tales in the modern NBA because it's how everything can go wrong. You can make a big move and it not pay off for you, right? You can be willing to pay all the money for a winner and it not work out for you. You can put a collection of talent together that looks like that are stars and it not work out for you, right? All those things can come together and you can end up looking stupid like the Phoenix Suns are right now with their organization. And I don't mean to be harsh on the Phoenix Suns. You never know. Maybe there's a move out there that's gonna change some things and get them back on the right path, and they can rebuild some things around Devin Booker. But I say this: the next part of this cautionary tale for the Phoenix Suns may be that you draft a Devin Booker and you eventually have to trade them because of the idiotic decisions that you have made over the course of their career being with you, right? Has ultimately led you to have to sending that player out just so you can try to salvage some semblance of a future for your franchise. And that is where the Phoenix Suns sit right now. That is why the Phoenix Suns are such a cautionary tale. That is what other teams around the NBA need to look to avoid. Because I tell you what, you can talk about teams that don't have talent. You can talk about teams that have made a bad trade to send out some draft picks. You can talk about the trade that some teams that didn't draft the right player, right? You can talk about all those things. But it's all happening on one team at one time and culminating in an utter shit show. And that's what the Phoenix Suns have to show right now. That's what they have to give to the NBA right now. All the little glimmers of hope that they've had at different points in this season, it all meant nothing. Because ultimately, the Phoenix Suns are a team that has no future right now. Despite having some talent on that team, they have no future on this team at all. They started off this season 9-2. 9-2. That's where they were. They were at 9-2 by November 12th. And then if you look by December 31st, they were 15-7. By the end of January, they were 25-22, looking like they may be on the uptick again. By the end of February, they were 28-32. By the end of March, right, they were 35-40. And now since right now, they are 35-45 with 2 games left in the season. That's why the Phoenix Suns are a cautionary tale. Thank you guys for tuning in. You guys can follow us at NBA Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, NBA Central Show at gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number 1 spot for everything basketball related. I'll see you guys the next time I feel like making a video. Bye tomorrow. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.